Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sibyl's Lab. I'm Danielle.
And I'm Amelia.
This is Sibyl's Gab. This is an episode of Sibyl's Gab where we're going to chat about whatever we want that has to do with tarot. It's a catch-all series, whatever heart's desire. As a little fact about me, so we're going to share some facts about us along the way so that you can get to know us as we get to know you. I will share some things about my tarot bio. My birth card is the Empress, and my Deacon Court card in the Minors is the Four of Swords. So make of that what you will. Amelia.
And so my birth card is the Hierophant, and my Deacon Court card is the Seven of Wands, or Deacon card in the Minors is the Seven of Wands. And today our topic is the self-calculated cards. So we're going to start by talking about year cards, which is when you add, we'll get into the details of that. But we're going to talk about what they are, if they matter, and how we work with them, if we work with them. And maybe we'll continue this in a later series to talk about birth cards, deacon cards, all of those other sorts of cards.
All right, everyone, before we talk about year cards, let's talk about how you figure out your year card. There are a few ways to do this math, and I'm sure some people have very strong feelings about the right way to do this math. We're going to use what we think is the simplest way, and this is how we calculated the cards we'll be talking about today. But for people who know the way to do it and do it a different way, please throw that in the comment section. It never hurts to have alternatives. But for us today, the method that we used is to take first your birth month and your birth date, right? Set aside your birth year. So for your birth month and your birth date, you are going to add the single digits together. As the example for how we're doing this, we're going to use the birthday of Rachel Pollack, the beloved late tarotista who was born on August 17th. So August 17th, the 8th month, the 17th day, we are going to add three numbers together, 8 plus 1 plus 7. That's 16, right? So that's where we're starting, 16. Now we're going to take the current year, this year, and add those digits together, 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5, because we're in 2025. And what's that math? That gives us 9. So we have 16 for her birth month and birth date, and 9 for her birth, or for the current year. We have those two numbers from the single digits added up, and that gives us 25, which is definitely, there's no Arcana 25 in the majors. So Amelia, what do we do with that number 25?
So if you get a card number that is greater than 25, you just add those two digits together, or 21, excuse me, you just add those two digits together. So for 25, we would add 2 plus 5, and you get 7, which would make your card of the year, or Rachel's card of the year, rather, the Chariot. You know, as with more, like we mentioned, as with most things in tarot, there's more than one way to do this sorts of math. This is just the one that we use and the one that we're going to use today for the purposes of this video. But if you do calculate your year card differently, we'd love to know how you do it. And it never hurts to have options. So maybe we can pick which year card we like the best and use it in the future years to come.
I'm not above that. I would do that, like calculate both of them or all three of them or whatever math there is and choose the one I like.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump into our big questions. So, do either of us care about our year card? Does it have any place in our practice? Kind of, who cares? That's neat. We can calculate a card. Does it matter to you? I'm going to let you go first because I think we have different answers about this, but I'd like to know what your response is.
Okay, so it used to be something that I sat down every year and I figured out, and I kept it as like a central focus for my year. And that would change year to year. Sometimes I would use that in a full like year spread that I would do for myself at the beginning of the year. And so I would put whatever month card I had that I had pulled it in January or at the end of December in conversation with the year card. And I would do that sometimes with a full deck and sometimes with just the majors of a TDM. So if my card is the Chariot, then how does the Justice relate to the Chariot for me this month? And it was very much like a thing. It was a practice. It was part of my practice and something that I kept in focus all year long. In my days of bullet journaling, even when I would start a new month, I would revisit my card of the year and revisit my card of the month and really like use that as a theme for how I would set my month. I will say I have never done either a year spread or even a card of the year. I've never for myself looked at it as a predictive sort of card. However, I have found retrospectively, when I'm looking back at the end of the year, those year cards and those cards that I picked for each month often came about even when it wasn't like a focus. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, well, we'll get into this later. I'll bring that up at a different time. That's a good example to bring up. But anyway, so that's how I used to do it. Now I don't I don't even think about it. That's a lie. I think about it, but I don't do anything with it. I don't pay much attention to it. How it often comes up is usually sometime in February, I'll have a thought that goes, oh, I don't know what my card of the year is. And so I'll figure out what my card of the year is and I'll go, huh, that's interesting. And then I kind of move on with my life. And I will only think about it if I'm going through something really challenging that year and I go, does this feel like a justice moment? And if it doesn't, then I go, okay. And if it does, then I go, okay, that's interesting. And I move on again. It more is one of those things that kind of passes in and out of my thoughts, but I don't focus on it quite like I used to. And I don't really even use it as a tool. It's just more of a like fun fact of the year.
I like that. I mean, that makes sense. That is a perfectly reasonable way to use it. I will say that it sounds like the degree of importance or seriousness with which you've worked with this card has decreased over the years. It's the same for me. I do always know my year card and I do care about it. It matters in my practice or becomes useful in my practice, but much less so than it used to. There's something really novel about feeling like you have a special relationship with a card. We shared our birth cards, right? Or our deacon cards. Like, I know that. And I feel like me and the Four of Swords, we have a thing that no one else except other Four of Swords people have. So there's something sort of neat about that when you get into tarot that's exciting. This is beyond that, though. Currently, I think that it becomes important in my practice. One way that it was important before is I would do a 12-month spread for my year. I no longer do that. It's because I just don't. I find it cumbersome and quickly irrelevant to my practice. Like, I don't remember. I have to revisit a picture of what my 12 cards of the year were. But it used to be when I did that. So I'd pull a card at December 31st, a card for each month. I would put my year card in the middle, what is calculated as my year card. So during my devil year, dun dun dun, I put the devil card in the middle and then pulled different cards for each month. No longer that, but I do always keep it in mind because I like to study tarot. I think that both of us sort of landed in what we're doing in the lab because we like to study tarot. And I find the year card to be a perfect excuse to deep dive into an archetype that I may not have gotten to know deeply. And you do a lot of work with a single card over a year, right? And I don't even mean like I think about my card every day, but I absolutely think about it regularly, and which goes to say maybe once every 2 weeks or something, and might note something in my journal. And thinking about a card like every 2 to 3 weeks over the course of a year gives you insights. This is the thing I do every time I get a new deck. I look at the year card of that year. So as I'm sorting through a new deck, I want to know what the archetype for my year in this new deck does that my other decks may not do. So that's a fun thing that I do that changes every year with my year card. And I get to know the archetype of my card deeply that way. So it has become a really great excuse. I find myself, right, like looking for excuses to work with the tarot, and that's a great excuse. All right. So, we'll talk further about like how the cards have shaken out in reality, but what is our next question, Amelia?
So the next question we're going to talk about is, how do we understand the implications of the year card? Like, is it predictive? Is it thematic? Is it something else entirely? And if there are any synchronicities that we've noticed between previous cards and the events of that year. I'll kick us off because, so the year my son was born, the year my son was born was a death year for me. And I remember, I mean, that is like a death of one phase of life into the other. And that was one of those, I mean, well, I was already pregnant when I figured out that year card. My son has an April birthday, so, you know, obviously, and I know what was coming. That's kind of an interesting thing about cards of the year, is you kind of know what's coming next.
Yeah.
Sometimes, depending on how the math adds up, it'll kind of switch around numeral, like kind of within the majors, but generally speaking, you know what's coming next. So I knew that death was coming up the next year, and I was like, well, this is interesting. And obviously I knew what that was pointing to. And that, what was kind of fascinating about that in particular, though, was that previous year, before I got pregnant, I did a spread for not midsummer, but one of the kind of astrological events of the summer. I did a spread. This was like a few weeks before I got pregnant, and I pulled like what the card for, like, where am I going to be finding myself at this time next year, and I got the death card, which is so fascinating because that's where I was in a death year, and it was that time of the year where I was really experiencing this shift into a new phase of life, which was kind of fascinating. And that was kind of the first year where I really turned my attention. Again, predictive, maybe, or just really like pointing a neon sign to something that I needed to know. And I think that's what it can do, is it can really kind of point a neon sign to where you should turn your focus, or how you can frame certain events of your life that take place throughout that year. Last year, which is 2024, was a really difficult year for me. It was very challenging, lots of change, lots of kind of shedding of skin. And my card of the year was Judgment, or the Eon. And I really like looking back on that year, especially the Eon, the Thoth version of that card. That was a fire baptism year. Like, I was absolutely being thrown into the cleansing flames all year long, one thing after another. And so I think, there's something to be said for it being something important, accurate.
Someone says, is tarot predictive or reflective? Yes. Yes. I don't know. Yes. So, yes, there have been interesting synchronicities. Wherever you look for synchronicities, I think it's easy to find them. But it does feel remarkably matched. COVID was my death year. Now, there's something kind of gross about being like, well, because my card during COVID was the death year, that means, but there is absolutely a version of me that passed during that period. Like, I think all of us in this world transformative moment were forced to become new people and shed some version. It certainly put a period on the way we'd been living our lives before and introduced a new way of being. And so there's that. There is the year of the devil, when my husband had a catastrophic accident and fell off a roof. I had a job of the mind. I very much lived up here, and I was above, like, I've always had a complicated relationship with the element of earth. That's where I feel like my lessons are, because I need to learn my limits. I need to like bring myself back down to earth. I met my husband in graduate school. He too lives up here. You know, that's all well and good, but like, we're in bodies, and there is nothing more humbling or that reminds you more of the limits of the body and like the material world than putting you in your place with like what's going on. And I felt the devil as an earth card, as a materialism card that grounded me in like the function of the body. I think often the devil gets misunderstood as if materialism or being anchored to earth is always bad. No, sometimes I think we need to be properly placed there. I made a decision to transform my career last year. That was a star year. I feel like I found a new star and like headed in this new direction. So that all goes to say, I don't necessarily view those as predictive alignments, but it is a frame for looking at that moment. If it had been the tower year, I could absolutely, I think there's a totally easy way to say the year you change your career is a catastrophic change, like not necessarily a bad catastrophe, but there is an absolute destabilizing of things. But it was the star year. So it gives me a frame for looking at that experience in a way that helps. These are big things. They're big cards and big themes, and it's helpful to have some means of engaging with them, like these really big things. When I was feeling unanchored during lockdown, it helped to think meaningfully about how to engage with the real challenge of that and come to terms with the fact that I was not going to be the same on the other side of lockdown that I was at the beginning, and simply accept that death is a period, and then there's a new sentence. So I needed something, and it provided that. If it had been temperance, it would have given me another frame for looking at it. So it's so valuable. I found it such a valuable way of engaging. But there is something that feels very aligned about redirecting myself during a star year, or the devil pushing my husband off the roof. Right? Like, so.
And I think, you know, if I engage with my card of the year at all anymore, it is very much, it is the medicine that I sometimes go to when I need it most. It's, you know, it's, I'm going through something really difficult right now. What's my card of the year, and how can this help me frame this really difficult moment in my life? And sometimes the framing is like, my card of 2020 was the tower, which was like a global tower, but it was also a very personal tower year for me as well, COVID notwithstanding. And so, you know, even if it's like I'm in a tower moment and it is my tower year, the helpful framing for me in that moment is I know what's coming next, and it's the star. And so I think that, you know, if nothing else, it can be a really potent balm for whatever is ailing you as you move throughout the year, and for whatever is kind of, you know, weighing on your soul. Yeah, I mean, I think I look at it more at the end of a year than I do at the beginning of a year, because I'll kind of look back in retrospect and go, what was my year like? And how did all of these things that happened shape up to make this a devil year or a tower year?
We're going with the big guns. Like, I like that we've not mentioned like the Hierophant or the Empress or the Magician, but these have been big years. I will say some people work with a year card for the global year. So 2 + 0 + 2 + 5, we're in 2025. If you use the digit math of calculating, that means the globe is in a hermit year. It's interesting to think about, you know, the world dynamics within the context of the hermit, and like how we can frame what we're seeing going on globally in a way that aligns or engages with that archetype. But I do like your saying that like a way of using that year card is as a kind of medicine. Like that is the medicine we can use as we're trying to like look at the painful mess, because even if something is good, if it's heavy, it's a change and it's disruptive and it's still big. It's still like challenging to make sense of. In our modest little minds. I'm projecting in my modest little mind. But let's talk specifics for 2025. We did Rachel's card. My year card this year is the moon. What is your year card?
Mine is the world.
That's all. I will say, as you know, and I've said this in other videos, I met you and our other friends that we met in a sort of tarot reading group during my temperance year, and you guys tempered the like, spinning mind that was happening during lockdown. So I feel like you guys were part of my medicine. But you got to know me well enough to know that even though the moon is not a birth card for me, it's not in my tarot biography, that I loved that card and I had a special relationship to that card. I don't know that I ever made a point of like talking about that at length, but I felt like you saw me enough to know that really, I was like, we're friends, like we're soul sisters. You really have to understand something about me, because I think I'm pretty cheerful, and I think that the moon is rarely characterized as a cheerful archetype. Don't think it is cheerful, but there is something I love about the dark and what I can learn there, and I just love this archetype. I was so excited it was my moon year. The moon is it's where dreams go to live, but it's also where nightmares are. Of course, it's dark. There are illusions there. Like you don't know what you're seeing in the dark under the moon, but that is where the good stuff happens. Like that is an underworld. Like and I'm very much feeling myself becoming, I think I look pretty young, but I'm probably older than you think I am. I feel myself becoming an older woman slowly, but yes. And it feels like a crone card. It feels like a card where I get to meet the crone a little bit and like say hi. I'm probably going to be seeing you soon again, but there's such magic to that card. So I was excited that it was my moon year. How are you feeling about your world year?
So I didn't even know it was my world year. I didn't do the math until like March. There's aspect of this. So when I describe how I used to practice with this card, part of the reason I don't do that or with my year card, part of the reason I don't do that anymore is because I'm busy. I've got a young kid in elementary school. At that point in my life, I was working full-time in theater, doing like multiple jobs, which I was working 3 jobs at a time, but I was also, that affords you a luxury of time that in a weird kind of way. And there's a flexibility of time with that as well. So anyway, I mean, I just don't have the time for that. And I don't have the idea of on December 31st, staying up late to pull like a year spread or go to bed. I would rather and then it's like 3 weeks later and I go, okay, well, it's too late for me to do this. So I might as well just scrap the whole thing. But anyway, I'll usually do it while I'm like driving or in the shower or something. I'll go, oh, I should probably figure that out. My year card. So I'll do the math in my head. And so I didn't know it was a world card until probably early March. I'm not sure what to make of it yet. I mean, if I think about where I am in this moment, I do feel like I'm in this sort of like birthing process, and that is the world, right? That is it's one way to see the world, is that it is moving from one thing into the next, but like in a big way. It's not like death where you're kind of saying goodbye to one thing. It's like I am creating something new, and I am an active part of that process of creating something new. And I think I'm very much in that space in my life right now. I mean, all of the kind of shedding that I did last year in 2024, now I'm ready for that newness. Part of that is this work that we're doing here and opening Sibyl's lab. That feels very much like a birth and like a creation and opening doors to a new world for me. You know, also kind of shifting in other areas of my life, like within my motherhood and even within my partnership. Like I do feel like I'm on a precipice. You know, I think if I had, so my life exploded last year in April. But if I had talked to myself in March of 2024, do you feel like this is going to be a judgment year? I would have been like, what are you talking about? No. You know, I was not feeling very, like I was at that point in life. Little did I know. And then, yeah, here I am, even in January of this year. If I had done this math, I would have said, this feels right. And it tracks. And I think, again, kind of going back to this idea of using it as medicine, I have kind of touched base with it and used it as almost like a touchstone for myself, that when things are feeling really difficult, it's like, well, yeah, you're giving birth to a new world. Like, come on, cut yourself some slack. And kind of that encouragement to keep kind of moving forward as with each step. But like I said, I do tend to I use it more in a retrospective and looking back sort of fashion. So I'm excited to see at the end of this year what my thoughts are around my card of the year. Yeah.
I would say engage with them differently depending on the card and the year. This year, I feel like the moon is a place and I want to go play in it. And other times I've been like, the devil's coming for me. You know, like, here comes this figure. So it's an interesting, I'm sensing, especially this year, because of my eagerness to reach the moon year. I think that's probably the card I've been most excited about since I've been calculating cards. That, like, I'm approaching it particularly differently because I don't know that it's lined up with things really. I'm pushing fears and doing all of that stuff, but we'll see. I do think this is one that I'm going to really reflect at the end of the year alongside you, and we're going to be like, I don't think this made any sense, or really I see all of the ways that this fit. But it's not so clear right now.
Yeah, I think, you know, and I think, again, I like the idea of kind of coming back to it throughout the year. Okay, let's do some show and tell. Let's show some 3 cards that are versions of this, of our year cards. That was not very eloquently said, but you get what I mean.
3 of our favorites of this particular card, right? So, well, like,
I didn't do favorite. I just picked decks that I find exciting right now.
You're the worst.
I did decks that I find exciting right now.
Okay, that's fair. Like the decks that you're really engaged with these archetypes. I chose 3 of my favorite moons. Like, so not necessarily my favorite decks, but my favorite moon cards in the decks that I have. The first, we'll go one at a time. The first for me is, unsurprisingly, Tabula Mundi. I've called this my soul or home deck. This card is probably my favorite card in the entire deck. I think it's gorgeous and weird. I've had this deck for years and have worked with it relentlessly, but I still don't know. You know, there are so many things for me to learn from this card. Like the blood dripping down from the moon, the lunar moth coming out of the back of the head, the Hebrew letter association for the moon, Koth, I think, represents the back of the head, the part of the head that we do not see. We have like the beetle, the mechanic beetle, crawling up, holding like a golden pearl, which is clearly a reference to like a scarab holding the solar ball in Egyptian mythology. But like, there's just so much mystery here and beauty. I don't know that I have anything sort of more eloquent to say. It's interesting how little I can say, like, this is what this card means, because when I'm reading with it, I get it. Like, I feel like we know each other, but it's so weird and mysterious and beautiful that I couldn't sum it up for someone really. It feels like an image you have to sit with. So anyway.
Okay. And I think so. I kind of want to add a little thing here. You know, with the world card, I find that this is one of those cards that decks will either just do some copy of what we know is the world card, which I do love. I love the TDM world card. It says everything that it needs to say, in my opinion. But it's not a deck that I often see people veering too far from that. I mean, even Rider-Waite-Smith, it was basically like, cool, TDM, let's copy it. Let's match that energy. So it's kind of hard for me to even pull like decks with specific world cards to me, but this is absolutely one I knew I wanted to show. This is a newer deck to me, but I absolutely wept when I saw this card. This is from the Aqua Maree Tarot by Alexa Harrington. It's a collage deck done with analog collage. I am not Catholic or religious, but I can get down on some Mary and Jesus iconography. And that it moves me every time I see any version of Mary, and especially Mary with baby Jesus. So we have here that image in the center, and then if you can kind of see around the edge, we have all of these people kind of circling around it.
Oh, I didn't.
Those are all people.
Okay.
And then we have figures on bikes on one of those, you like spin it around and it shows like a moving image.
Oh, yes. Okay. Like okay.
Yeah. Moving around, and like this version is blurry. This one's really clear. So it's like there's this kind of movement happening around all of this. And to me, I think what I love about this image, I mean, aside from I just love Mary, is like, I don't know, there's this sense of like coming together in all of it with all of the people surrounding them. And you can like barely even tell unless you're looking really closely that that's what it is around her. And it's like this is the world. The world is those things that we bring into the world that can affect change. I mean, what a powerful idea of like, it's not just some mom and child. It is mom and, in the Christian religion, the savior of the planet. Like it's a really powerful thing to think about. That feels like a really big world card to me. And it's also really touching. There's an intimacy there that you have in the center of all of that it doesn't, well, it is, it's the world. It feels super global. It feels big. We have all of the people around, but they're kind of protected there in the center inside of the frame. And for Mary and that figure, her world is her baby. And I think that's also really lovely to, like, as a mom myself, I think that's really beautiful to think about. Your world, like just focusing on that thing or that person. Isn't that lovely?
Mine was Tabula Mundi. Can you remind us the title of that deck?
That is the Aqua Maree Tarot by Alexa Harrington.
Is that still in print?
Very much so, yes.
Excellent. Mine is as well. All right. For my next card, I am sharing one of the expansion cards for Terra Volatile. This is the moon replacement in one of the expansions. It's called The Descent. I am obsessed with this image. I love the myth of Inanna Ishtar descending to the underworld to see her sister Ereshkigal, queen of the underworld. This is also, it's clear that this is a reference to the Babylonian goddess Ishtar-Inanna because of what she's holding, but we also see similar representations of Lilith with the clawed feet and looking like, a nightmare of a woman, a succubus who's coming for you. This is a really scary looking woman, right? And there are owls on the ground. There is a snake behind her. but I love her. I want to go to the underworld with her. I love this myth. I think this is a gesture at the moon as the placeholder for the terrifying woman. There's such power in a representation of womanhood that is like frighteningly unsunny. It's just, just a little bit of rage, a little bit of, oh no, here comes the demon woman. The woman is nightmare, and her fearlessness in traveling to the underworld. I just live for it. Love it. I love it. So this is renamed The Descent in reference to her descent to the underworld. That is my second favorite representation of the moon. How about you for the world?
My second world card I pulled from the Raven's Prophecy. This is a deck I've had for a really long time. It's a very well-known, beloved deck. I do believe it's still in print. And I think this is one of the times when we have someone who veers away from the traditional world. And I think this is really cool. I mean, it's like, this is the world as possibility, the world as, the world is your oyster kind of mentality. And as a person who loves a road trip, I like the idea of the world being kind of the beginning of a road trip, or even kind of setting off into the wide world, the open world. And so, yeah, I think, when I think about this in relation to where I am and where my year has gone so far, I mean, yeah, this feels like, I'm on a journey, and it is a journey that is going to lead me to something bigger than myself. And I think that's cool. And I'm here for it.
You are a road trip kind of gal. I've never met a person who's more willing to drive 9 hours than you. All right, I'm going to do my third card. My third choice for favorite moon comes from the first edition of the Ritual Tarot. So this is the back. But here is the moon card in the Ritual Tarot. I know that the creator also published a second edition. I'm not sure if that's still in print. If it's not, I suspect that she will be coming out with a third edition, but do pay attention to her Etsy shop. So this edition of the moon card, I think what I like about it is it kind of covers all the bases. Like, we have the coyote wild trickster energy of the moon. We have the dove being squeezed by a veiny hand, the pressure and anxiety of darkness like that. The robust womanhood of the Venus of Willendorf. That's a lot. And what do we have? What else do we have? We have some other stuff in the corner there that I was looking at earlier. Here's the rabbit, the kind of, the fecund fertility of the matriarchal goddess, and the two-way vision here, like the god figure that is facing both directions, and that owl in the center who has the range of vision. Owls are so creepy the way they can turn their necks, but like they can look in all directions. It encompasses so much. It's almost a lazy pick though, because I'm like, what moon cards encompass like all of what I find to be possible in this archetype? I do not find all of the majors to have so much room. And I don't think they all should. But this one, there's so many things you can do in the dark. You don't know what you're walking into. And I might be walking into any of these corners when I pull the moon card. We have that owl and the big moon in the center facing on, and I just think it's great. I think it includes all the stuff. What's your final pick?
Okay, so my final pick is from the Kazanlar Tarot. This is the out-of-print vintage edition, but it is in print. You can get it from Emil Kazanlar's website. It's shipped from Hungary, I believe.
Sure.
Somewhere far away. So you have to be willing to wait for it. This is a bit closer to our traditional world card. So we have our dancing figure in the center, who's actually surrounded by an Ouroboros. And then we have our four, what are these? Not the directions.
The tetramorph, the four fixed signs, the four evangelists.
Yeah. And so that's what we've got going on here. And then our figure behind them is kind of a landscape. You can see it very faintly. You know, I do like the traditional world card. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's a beautiful card. I think it signifies a lot of the things that we want a world card to signify. The addition of the Ouroboros here is something that I really appreciate, because it kind of hints at this cyclical nature that we're going to enter into this card at many phases through our lives. That even though we feel like we've stepped into it, we've done the work, we've gone through the journey, now I'm in my new, like, enlightened version, and it's like, okay, great, you get to start all over again. So the idea that, like, we are going to keep coming back here, I really appreciate that reminder, that you know, I'll never stop growing and and awakening to new things and to new possibilities, and I like that. This is also just a beautiful deck. Really
Kazanlar is so intentional about gesturing at all kinds of religious faiths in an earnest way, and images that are similar to that in medieval art tend to be characterized as like images of the portal into the kingdom of God or the kingdom of heaven. There is something, so I don't think that Kazanlar insists on that kind of doctrinal, orthodox interpretation, but I do think he captures something about the metaphorical beauty of that as a descriptor, like a kind of spiritual fullness and cycle. That's really lovely. Good call. Good pick.
love her.
We have kind of answered this. The last question we had was, how is 2025 shaping up in conversation or in comparison to the card? I think we kind of answered this. Would you add anything? Because I mean, we kind of both said, well, let's talk at the end of the year and see how things are aligning.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, like, I think I am very much in a world point in life, and it feels it's a good feeling. Like, I'm not complaining about it at all. But yeah, I'm really excited and curious to see where it goes. After having this conversation with you, I might pay more attention to it, pay more closely, because like I said, it really was several months into the year before I realized, oh, I haven't done that math yet.
For shame.
I know.
It's so fun though. It's such a nerdy, like, even if you don't use it, it's a fun thing. Anyway, what is our reading for the collective? So we're going to wrap up like we normally do by asking a question for the collective. What is that question, Amelia?
So our question today is, how can we allow the themes of our year cards to influence our choices and actions in this coming week? So even if you're not watching this when we put the video, like, for you, it's just whatever point you are over the course of the next 7 days. How can I let the themes of my year card influence my choices? And what are you going to read with?
I'm using Tabula Mundi because I love this deck and it's an excuse to use it. I do want to throw out, I know some people use the year card that's associated with just the year. So people who would use the 2025 card of the Hermit and make that their year card, there's nothing wrong with that. And there's also nothing wrong with sort of intentionally and mindfully choosing your own major arcana card to work with for the year. So that is an option too. I like the kind of happenstance of math making me work with something, the presumed randomness of that, or the way that it's just for me, because, I'm a special snowflake. So let's see how we should engage with or let our choices be influenced by our year card. Ooh. I have adjustment or justice.
And I have the Ace of Swords.
Ooh, that is, remind us of the name of the deck.
This is the Aqua Maree. So this is that collage deck that I was showing.
So weird in a great way. So weird in a beautiful way.
The backs on this card, these have to be some of my favorite backs on a tarot deck.
They are fierce. I love that. There's something so fun about that. Okay, so how are we meant to well, I mean, the Ace of Swords, this is air and air, super air. Like, tell the truth, cut through the BS. Both of them, it sort of feels like if you didn't hear one card say it, let's make sure you hear the other cards say it. I would almost suggest that this is an insistence. We all tell ourselves fibs. Like, we survive sometimes by reframing the reality around us in a more palatable way. But this feels like an insistence that we use our year card to tell ourselves the truth. That, like, pay attention, because there's some way that you may be not facing reality, and use your year card as a way of anchoring yourself in that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think kind of piggybacking off of that with the, the ace as the beginning stage of air, it's, adjustment tells us, like, cut through the bullshit, tell the truth. And the ace says, think about things in a new way. You've got to reframe. You've got to, like, your idea about this, what you think about this isn't working for you. So you have got to find some other way to think about this. And that is how you are going to ultimately find a kind of balance for yourself.
And I would say both of our cards, this is a really unimposing adjustment or justice card. There's something beautiful about this music. This is Ma'at gliding on ice skates with the sword at her feet. So she's not even holding the sword. It feels like there's something beautiful that can happen by telling ourselves the truth in some way. So, like, there's something fun and really balancing and enjoyable if we would just tell ourselves the truth. I always feel like we do a reading and I'm like, what am I projecting?
I know.
I'm telling myself a fib.
But even, like, pointing out some of these, like, collage bits in here. So we've got this person who's staring us straight down. I feel like that is that, like, are you sure that's how you want to think about that? And then the two figures with their eyes kind of like lasering into each other makes me think that a lot of this is going to be around our relation to other people and how we handle and navigate those.
It's always helpful to have context for where to look. I like that. That is helpful. Okay.
You might not be on the right side of things like you think you are.
Me? All right, friends. Thank you for talking your cards with us. We entertain each other, but it's always nice when we're able to engage you in conversation. We are going to continue to put out videos every Wednesday. A lot of Sibyl's Gab, monthly Sibyl Unscripted, and other things along the way. So please join us. We are always looking for suggestions for what topics you're interested in hearing about. So drop down in the comments if you're up to share your year card, your favorite version of that, or any suggestions for a future video. You can find a description of our chosen decks in the video description below, as well as information about our socials and how to book a reading with us. We are so excited to connect with you, and we will see you next time in the lab.